From right here in Mississippi, he is a bass fishing Hall of Famer. He's one of my heroes in bass fishing. Enjoy this episode here today with Alfred Williams.
This episode of the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast is brought to you by the Foundation for Mississippi Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks.
You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast, and I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. And today, fishing, bass fishing, with a guy who's from right here in Mississippi, who's been really maybe better at it than most everybody else we know. His name is Alfred Williams with us here today. Mr. Williams, it's a pleasure to get to talk to you.
It's a pleasure being here. I'm glad to be on your show.
Especially, I'm going to bring it up, on your birthday. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I guessed 51, but I was off by a couple.
No, believe it or not, I turned 77 today.
I was 77 years old. You're a young 77 and still fishing bass tournaments.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I told my wife I was going to go as long as they tell me I can go. I'm going to go.
Yeah. So let's start with, you are recognized as someone that was really the first or one of the first to make bass fishing with a hollow body frog a popular thing. Now, whether or not you were the first to really get after it with the hollow body frog or not, you tell me the story. When did you begin to kind of use that technique back in the day?
It happened back 75, 76, that's somewhere along in there. The Snag Proof had a frog out. It had a little funny looking legs on it. And you just throw the whole thing out there. It's just like a frog looked like, but it was just hollow bodied. Uh-huh. And I had saw a guy from up in North Alabama, up around Gunnersville or somewhere. Okay. He had come up with an idea of maybe putting something on, on a frog. It was called a hydro frog, okay. And I kind of copied off of that and figured out how I could maybe put a skirt or something in there. I started off putting a little worm in there, and that didn't work too good. And so I figured out how I could get a skirt to go through the hole once I cut the little legs off. I cut the little legs off and threaded this skirt through there and went out there and was fishing it. We're using 20-pound test line and casting. It cast pretty good, but it didn't cast really well. And I thought maybe put a little weight in there. So I put a little BB shots in there and started throwing it in. And lo and behold, lily pads was everywhere then and on the reservoir. And nobody was fishing that kind of stuff. Everybody was out on in the open water and everything. And I was always in the grass and around the heavy cover. And a frog just was the best bait I could throw to get a bite and not get hung up on. So yeah. That's when I, started, and it just took off from there, because I was the only one that was fishing the frog on the reservoir. Only one.
The only one. And it's so interesting to think that there was a time when people weren't doing that on the reservoir, because now it's like everybody does it. Mm-hmm. And it sort of started with you. And I guess because you had success, others began to hear about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, back then, obviously we don't have the media like we have it today. It was more word to mouth and kind of, at that time and at tournament. And then starting, when I really started using the frog, it wasn't hardly a tournament went on, not bragging, that it wasn't no question was I going to finish in the money. It was win the tournament, but I was going to be in the money. It wasn't a tournament that came up that I didn't make the money of some sort, throwing a frog, because nobody was doing it but me.
But you. But that initial frog that you got a hold of and sort of, made some tweaks, some modifications on your own, was it weedless, or did it have like a treble hook?
Well, it had the little, little hooks that fit along the body, went out and turn up.
Right. So it's sort of weedless.
Well, it was, they laid up against the plastic. They fitted down the plastic. And if they got it where they're catching too many weeds, you kind of bend the hooks in a little bit. If you wasn't missing fish or something, you might bend it out a little bit. As long as that hook stayed along the body of that frog, you pretty well had no problem with it.
Yeah, that's really neat. And before we leave that subject, when did when did the other companies, and it became such a popular thing that you started to see different companies making a soft body frog popping up all over the place?
Well, it went on a long time. We got a company here in Mississippi, and I think the company still, matter of fact, I know it still is in operations, called Scum Frog.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, and that's what people, all of the companies, when another fisherman or somewhere they talk about frog, they always say Scum Frog. I mean, this is a catchy name, and this is a company over at Columbus, Mississippi, I believe it was. And I tried to work with them a little bit many years ago, and but I had hooked up with Snag Proof out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and that's where I was using their frog, and then of course Scum Frog come out with that. Mm-hmm. But anywhere you went, they said, "What, you catch them on the Scum Frog?" It's just catchy. You know what I'm saying? It's just like people with trolling motors say, "What kind of motor guide you got?" I mean, you could have whatever kind you want, but they say what kind,
Right.
But it was just a catchy name, what it was.
Scum Frog. And the rest is history, they say. That was late 70s. And then in pretty short order, you were fishing professionally. When did you go from it was something that was fun to do, maybe local tournaments, to becoming a pro?
Well, becoming a pro, I guess was I say much later.
Okay.
Because we fished the Mississippi Bass Federation, and that's which is a club affiliated through Bass. We had the team tournaments out of Mississippi, and we was in the Central Division with Missouri, Louisiana, and Arkansas and stuff like that. And that's what got me started was winning that tournament and qualifying to go to the Bassmaster Classic. Now that's when it all, for say fishing professionally or whatever, it all started. Once I went to the Bassmaster Classic in 1983, qualifying for that and win and going to that and get up there with the Hank Parkers, Jimmy Houston's, the Rick Cluns, the Nixons and all that kind of stuff, and be at the Classic. And then, you come from the Classic and doing, what they've always said, pretty good, finishing 10th in the Bassmaster Classic. As a rookie, I mean, that was pretty good. Mm-hmm. But one thing led to another, and I was so into it that I would enter one BASS tournament a year, starting, in 1984. Just take me and just pay my own entry fee and go and take a week off and go and fish that one tournament. I did that till 1988, and then I was picked up by Ranger Boats, and they started taking care of all my entry fees, and then that's when I really got into fishing professionally on the circuit each year.
Each year. 1983, qualify for the Bassmasters Classic. Where was the tournament that year?
I was in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
I tell you, yeah, when you hear Bassmasters Classic and bass fishing, you don't automatically think Cincinnati, Ohio.
Well, no, that's on the Ohio River. And fishing was, well, I ain't gonna say terrible. It's just, in a river like that, it just wasn't very many fish there. I mean, it just, I guess, pollution or whatever you want to call it. We really struggled to catch a fish. I mean, most people didn't catch a fish. And when I got out to the first day and made my first stop, and I don't know, maybe 30, 40 minutes in, I had one that was right at 2 pounds. I said, and of course, everybody was talking about, I don't want a zero in the Classic. So I knew if I had a fish that I wasn't going to zero. And I think I wound up catching 3 fish that day. And was in, I don't know what place I was in after the first day, but the second day I think I caught 1. And then on the last day, I think I caught 2. And I almost had the lunk of the tournament was I had a 2.7, but a boy named Roger Farmer, which was another Federation guy, he had a 2.8.
And that was the biggest one.
That was the biggest fish of the tournament. And of course, I finished 10th, and a lot of the guys that was there that year that qualified for the Classic, they all came and congratulated me. The boat that I had, I was parked next to I think it was Hank Parker or something like that. And you're in the boatyard out there and all. And he said, man, you got what it takes. He said, you got what it takes. He said, just keep it up. And like I said, that just filled my head tremendously. And I had an opportunity to work out a boat deal there with Ranger Boats and Forrest Wood. And it was just he was just the nicest man you ever want to see in your life. Mm-hmm. And all he told me was, he said, this, when you get home, send me a letter and tell me what you want to try to do. And I rode up there and picked up a boat for G&B Marine with another guy to help him out. And Forrest, when I saw Forrest, he gave us a tour of the plant. And I saw a boat, and they were okay, they were going to let me, use the boat. And I looked around, I saw a color that I really, really liked, and I told him, I said, I like that boat right there. And Forrest, being the guy he is, he looked on the thing, he had a little piece of pasteboard, picked it up off, and he wrote on there, and he said, go build this boat for Alfred. And a month later, I had a brand new Ranger boat sitting out there. So, I mean, it just, that's all he said. He said, build this boat for Alfred. And they called about 3-4 weeks later, and said, we got your boat ready. And me and my wife, we drove up and picked it up, and it was just it was just a thing that you didn't just go up there. You go up there, you visit with them. You didn't just go up there and pick up a boat and drive off. You went up there, you sit down, y'all talked, and you went out maybe have a sandwich or something of that nature. It was that's the kind of company that they had at that time. And me and my wife we enjoyed it. We enjoyed it.
I got goosebumps as you were telling that story. I'm just thinking about you all those years ago, early 80s, from Mississippi. You make the classic. You meet people like Hank Parker, Rick Klein. I mean, these guys were giants in the sport of bass fishing. Yeah. You couldn't buy a BASS magazine and not see articles about those guys. Finished 10th. They pat you on the back, tell you great job. And Forrest Wood, the founder of Ranger Boats, personally says, make Alfred a boat. Looks like that one right there. It's a story that you couldn't make it up, dream it up if you wanted to.
No. That's just the kind of people that in the industry was like that. That's the way it was.
Yeah.
At that time, because the engine, outboard engines and all like that, it was OMC, which is at that time. And I called the guy up and went through G&B Marine, and they called and said, no, we'd be happy to send them a motor. They send their motor down for the boat and all that kind of stuff, So, I mean, like I said, that went on for 28 years. I would range for 28 years, Yeah. And then I got, opportunity to go over, because that's when Ranger stopped affiliating with Bass and started being affiliated with FLW and blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it was just a change of I guess, organizations. Yeah. It was. And then everything else, went extremely well. I mean, I fished competitive like that until 2009. That's when I come off the bass trail, if you want to call it. I still fish some bass opens, every now and then I'd fish bass open. I fished one of the last one I had here. I scared them in that one. I mean, it was October 22, I believe it was 20. Yeah, I scared them. I had them, and I still feel I should have won that tournament, but I didn't. Again, I finished 8th, 7th, 8th, something like that.
Yeah, top 10.
Yeah,
just a couple of years ago.
Uh-huh.
So, for you, looking back all those years, fishing pro tournaments, regional tournaments, what's the best tournament you ever had in terms of catching fish, like your top memory, other than fishing in the Classic, that first one?
I won what they call an Everstar tournament at Lake Sam Rayburn in 2003, I believe it was. And I weighed in the total of the tournament, I weighed in 91 pounds of total weight in the total weight of the tournament. And it was just, and that was one of the biggest. After winning that tournament, And I had a chance when I was fishing with FLW. Because that was FLW tournament also. Up at Beaver Lake. I made the top 10 cut. Now this was tough. I mean, to make the top 10 cut on that circuit, you had to be, some stuff had to go right in the first 2 days of the tournament. But I qualified for the top 10, and this is a $200,000 tournament. And again, like I said, you fishing, and the guy in the back of the boat, I had a co-angler in the back of the boat, and he's sitting back there catching these little old spotted bass. Could win a 12-inch spot, and I was kept trying to force feed these big largemouth, because that's what I had done so well in. And he sat back there and caught 6.5 pounds of fish, and I weighed in no fish that day, and that just about ruined my chances for winning that $200,000. But I was able to salvage something on the last day, and at least I won $25,000 that day. So, but you think about stuff like that, man, I mean, this was a shot. I mean, I knew I could have, if I'd have just caught what that guy caught in the back of my boat, like 6.5, 7 pounds of fish, it would have been a situation.
So it really is kind of a lesson for you or anyone else of you can't tell the lake what to do that day. You have to adjust to it. It's not the other way around.
It don't adjust to you. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It is. That's right. And I just kept, because I had caught a big sack of largemouth dequalified, and I just knew they were going to bite, and they wouldn't bite.
Wouldn't bite. Mm-hmm. That tournament that you won at Sam Rayburn, Texas, back in 2003, about 20 years ago. I don't know if I've ever told this story too much publicly. I was in that tournament.
Oh, my goodness.
And I finished almost last. I was either close to last or nearly. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I had never forgotten that you won it. And here's what I remember about that, is that in practice, it was warm, and we were up in the bushes, flipping bushes and catching fish shallow. And the night before that tournament, cold front came through. We woke up the next day. Some people had ice on their boats. It spit rain, snowed, and sleeted, about 38 degrees. And I didn't know how to adjust. You couldn't catch them in the bushes. I couldn't catch them in the bushes. And you adjusted somehow and caught them in deeper water, didn't you?
Yeah. What it was, I had, it was 2 creeks, Miller Creek and, I can't remember. I know Miller and some creek there. They came in and they met together.
Okay.
Out there off of a point or whatever you want to call it.
So the 2 creeks kind of converging.
And it was a standing timber. It wasn't thick timber.
Yeah.
But standing timber, and then they had stays up in that stuff. And in that timber, you had hydrilla growing. It wasn't thick. You have bushes, hydrilla in there. And, man, you would pull that rattle trap through there, and it would clear some of that hydrilla and hang on. I mean, I was throwing a 1/2 ounce. The co-anglers that I had each day caught all their fish on a 3/4. They didn't get near as many bites as I got, but their quality of fish that they did catch were bigger in some, some senses. But I tried my best to make them hit a 3/4 ounce rattle trap. I maybe caught 2 fish out of the whole tournament on a 3/4 ounce. But man, I tell you what, on that 1/2 ounce, I'm gonna tell you the number of it is 46 something. It was a certain color.
Okay. Red?
No, it wasn't red. It was brownish color.
Okay.
OW 46.
Okay.
They still make that.
Still make that.
They still make that. And I had a friend of mine. He was from Louisiana, and he had the first day he had 20 pounds on the same bait, and then the fish left him on the second day.
Yeah.
And oh man,
how about that? I've never been so cold in my life.
And now it's cold out there.
When the cold front came through in Texas in early February. And so, people listening, some people will know if they've done a lot of bass fishing, a 1/2 ounce rattle trap is pretty heavy lure. A 3/4 ounce rattle trap is a big, heavy lure. And so that was a situation, I guess, was it pre-spawn in early February in Texas?
Yeah, it was pre-spawn. All these fish were staged up to go back into these creeks. And there's a great spawning cove right behind this. I mean, and I've caught fish there more than once.
Okay.
I mean, but this just worked out just perfectly, for what they were, because I knew what was there. Because it kind of had a big long point off of it, and that hydrilla. I mean, I had caught them now several times before. Because that's been always my best lake I've ever been on. The first tournament I fished as a regular bass pro was at Sam Rayburn.
Okay.
That was like I said, 1984. Once I left the Classic, and oh man, I still love Sam Rayburn Reservoir. Every chance I get, I go there.
I bet. Have those kinds of experiences, And I thought about that coming in here to get to talk to you today. It was raining cats and dogs. Now, it's not cold today, but the weather's not at all perfect for fishing. It's actually awful. But I thought, we look at pictures in magazines growing up. We might watch a fishing show and Bill Dance catching fish and it's bright sunshine and beautiful. But that's certainly not what tournament fishing is. It's about figuring it out in some of the worst conditions
you can have. Exactly right.
Yeah. For you, as you look back at your career, you talked about all those years and all those experiences. Do you get a sense of accomplishment? Do you ever do that? Do you ever look back at it and think, boy, that went well?
Well, obviously, you look back and say, yeah, I had a good career. But it's always from the start to the finish, if you're doing something that I just really, really enjoyed. Bass fishing, if it gets in your blood, I mean, you just get ate up with it. And I got people right now, because my wife, she says, I got this friend of mine. I mean, he is so into fishing. He leave fishing, going fishing. I mean, we'll leave a tournament. He leave going to another place to fish. Mm-hmm. And I tell my wife that. She said, I don't know why you said that. You was just that. That's the way you were. That's the way you were. You just enjoy it so much. Mm-hmm. And to have the success that I have, yeah, I'm proud. I'm proud of that. Yeah. And like I said, a lot of people, I had a lot of help along the way. I mean, I really, really had a lot of help along the way. Yeah. And I can't thank the people that helped me along the way enough. I mean, I really, really appreciate it.
Sure. If somebody is listening to this, and let's say it's right about now, March, April, or maybe early May, this time of year in Mississippi, what would be your advice to them? Let's say they're going to go to a place like the reservoir. Mm-hmm. And if they could ask Alfred Williams, what I need to do in April to catch fish at the reservoir, what would be your advice to them?
Well, first of all, on the reservoir is not a deep lake. You fish reservoir shallow all the time. I don't care if it's 20 degrees or 90 degrees. You fish the reservoir. I very seldom get out of 5, 6, 7 foot of water on the reservoir. People say, well, I caught them in 18, 20 feet of water. I doubt seriously that. But reservoir is a shallow lake. So I either look for vegetation, wood, or shad, out on a ledge or something like that. They'll chase that. But me personally, if I'm out there fishing, I don't care what time of the year it is, I'm going to be in 3 to 5 foot of water, throwing worm, jig, frog, whatever dictated at that time. And that's where I'm going to stay. I mean, we got some guys out there, and they do pretty good. They go out on the big lake. They got, isolated stumps and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, they catch them. They say, well, I caught 25 fish today, and I weighed in 13 pounds. I said, well, I had 5 bites, but I got 19 pounds. So, I mean, that's the kind of fishing I like to do in the reservoir.
Okay. Tell me, and you fished in a lot of different places, obviously around the country, and certainly know other bodies of water in Mississippi very well. And spend a lot of time at the reservoir. Do you have another place to fish, places you fish in Mississippi that you would consider your favorites?
The only other place that if I had to just say I like fishing is probably be Lake Ferguson's Oxbow on the Mississippi River. Okay. Pigwick, Pigwick is kind of funny because it's in that little corner up there. It's good, obviously it's good fishing up there, but again, it can get pretty tough. If you ain't got the right deal up there, you're not gonna do very well. Yeah. But on Lake Ferguson, a place like that, you just find out what the water doing on the river, if it's rising, falling, or stationary or whatever. you can. It's easy to pattern. I mean, it's easy to pattern, up there, and that's about all. I mean, just over the years, the reservoir has been really, really good. So I just stay on the reservoir.
Yeah. What? How'd you get into it? If we go way back, like when we started talking, we kind of went to when you got a hold of that hollow body frog in the 70s, but obviously fishing for you goes back further. How'd you get into it initially?
Well, obviously, growing up, we fished with my grandmama, she going out to these little creeks and ponds and all. Because then you catching fish, you go eat them. I mean, you that's gonna be a meal. Mm-hmm. And I just enjoyed fishing, and I went in the military when I was 18 years old. I went in the military, spent 3 years in the military, and I still wanted to fish. And I got out and went to a place up there, and the guy up the street from me, he had a little old boat, and all. We went out with him one day, and I found me a little old boat maybe a week or so later. And I bought the little boat and asked him would we go out there, and because the water was up at the spillway. And what happens below the spillway, the fish, the white perch go absolutely nuts. Mm-hmm. And I had the little boat, and back then they didn't have a ramp, no ramp, and nothing. You back off and drop your boat off. And so he and I pulled up there, and wasn't nowhere to park. I mean, when you launch the boat, and it was a guy, and he says, look, he said, I got a buddy just running a trot line. He'll be back in a minute, and I'm gonna just pull my little boat out the way, and you all just back in. And that way you can have your spot when you come out, because we just going to take the boat and slip it up in the back of our truck. And as he give me the spot, a guy cut in on me to take the spot. Well, I was still in Vietnam then. I was still in Vietnam, and we got into it. And so, get that all out the way and blah, blah. And after that, I went over to the main lake. When I came back out to fish again, I'm looking around at the ramp at Pilacha Bay, and I said, man, there's nobody here. Uh-huh. So I'm just put the boat in right here and going out and fish, and I go out and catch 2 or 3 white perch, float around, catch a bass or so. And that's where I really, really started fishing, was that time. And then that's when the bass fishing craze really, really hit. Man, these guys were running around out there in little bass boats and all the places, the Elmo Wazelles and the Billy Primos and all them guys, they was fishing out there, and they was catching these big strings of fish. I mean, they was weighing in 15 fish a day and all that kind of stuff. And, bring them in. They come in and throw a big old string of fish up on the dock. So, yeah, we had a good time catching, and I'm, just struggling to try to catch 1 or 2,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I got, got into that, and to try to, when I fished my first tournament, now this is kind of what really started. I fished the first tournament. We used to have a tournament. They came up with a tournament called the Have a Heart Bass Classic. Went on for years and years and years. Have a Heart Bass Classic, and it was, and obviously I wanted to fish that tournament. Never fished a tournament before, of course, and so I called the guy up that was tournament director. And I just asked him, I said, look, I'd like to enter a tournament and all. And he said, yeah, we'll be glad to have you. So, I said, well, do you have any objection about somebody black fishing in a tournament? He said, no. He said, look, this tournament is for the Heart Association. He says, it's for everybody. Mm. He said, if you want to fish, he said, you just send your money in. And he said, look, if you have anybody say anything to you about anything, he said, you just call me up. And that was a guy named Dale Hudson. He was a salesman at East Fort back in those days. And so I went on and sent my money in and of course fished the tournament and drew out with a former pro football player from here in Mississippi, Perry Lee Dunn. And he played up at Ole Miss, played with Dallas and all that. And me and him drew out together. And he had been catching them all week and all that. And we ran around a little bit and wasn't catching none. I told him, I said, look, I know some fish yet. Mm-hmm. I said, they're on the other end of the lake. We went down there and, man, we started putting them in the boat. And we just ran out of time. And he said, look, if we went down and said we both would have did good.
Yeah.
He said, man, I'm sorry. I said, don't worry about it. And of course, I was that was it. I mean, I was hooked.
You were hooked.
I mean, I couldn't wait till the next tournament. The next tournament's coming up, the Magnolia Bass Classic, and I put my money in, and from here to there.
And that experience in that tournament with Perry Lee Dunn, you started at a place he knew, but then you go to a place you knew and you caught him. That probably gave you the confidence that, hey, you know what, I can do this.
Because when you got in, I mean, I think they paid 20 places. And it was a big field. I mean, it's a huge field. I mean, it's 200 boats in this tournament.
Wow.
And I want to say out of that, I think I finished 30 or 31 or something like that. And man, I was jacked up. Oh man. And all these people, the ones you just really seen on the water kind of fishing. You didn't know them, but you seen them out there fishing. And then of course, I think won the tournament. Trip Haydad won that tournament.
Okay.
And just me finishing where I finished, and I couldn't wait till the next tournament. The Magnolia, as soon as it came available, I was in it.
How big of a deal? What did it mean to you when you asked the guy who was running the tournament, "Hey, how do you feel about having a black fisherman in this tournament?"
Well, like I said, that's a long time ago, and of course, the race. Race relations was all right, was better than it had been in the past, but still in all, you want to know. And I wasn't going to cause no problem. If he just said, well, no, I just went on, done something else. But again, he came up and he told me that he'd be happy to have us in the tournament. And at that time, when you have a tournament, on the reservoir, a big tournament like that, you always have a big gathering of,
at the weigh-in.
A banquet. You have a banquet tonight. Yeah. I mean, the Hearts Association had a big banquet
the night before.
Okay. And we had, like I said, you got 400-500 people in there in the Primos North Gate. And me and my wife come in, and it was an E.F. Hutton moment. Complete silence. No problem. So we picked the table, we went around and sit. And just said, there. And by that time, a gentleman, well-dressed gentleman, you can tell he well-dressed, he came up and stood, he said, "Alfred, you don't know me." He said, "But you fish out there behind my house all the time." He had a house on the reservoir. And he said, "Would you and your wife, would y'all mind coming over and sitting with me and my wife at my table?" And so we got up and went on. This guy's name was Perry Hamilton. He was the general manager of East Ford at the time. And so we sits down and we talks, and his wife and my wife, they get together, they talk and we talk. And that, to me, it broke the ice. And from then on, people began to talk, and from this to this day forward. Yeah. And Perry Hamilton, I made him, we was friends for years and years. And even when he moved down to the Gulf Coast, he still would come up here to get his tax done every year. And when he come, I'd take him fishing. And then when he was down there, I had to go down there once a year to take him fishing down there on the coast. So, I mean, it was like I said, that was an experience that I went through, and everything worked out really, really well.
Yeah.
And I really, really thank him. And
I'd say it worked out well. And for you too, as you look back, I was looking through the notes, first African-American BASS fisherman, bass fishermen start on the professional level. It's really a significant thing that happened for you in your life. What were those initial experiences like fishing at the professional level and like that initial classic?
Like I said, about the first tournament I went to, after going to the classic, they had a tournament at Wausau, Missouri, up in Wausau. And I have no idea where this place is at. And my neighbor he had just bought a new truck, and of course I was pulling my boat with an old car or something, I guess it was. And I told him, I said, I'm going to this tournament, and he said, I need to use your truck. And he said, man, I'm gonna make sure everything's ready for you. And I went off up there, fished that tournament, and 3 days, never weighed in a keeper. Up at Truman Lake. Never weighed in never weighed in a keeper. But again, like I said, I met some people up there. Jimmy Houston, Charlie Ingram, Guy Aker.
Wow.
There's several other guys up there, and they was having what we call a focus meeting. And I said, well, it's a Christian meeting, and me and my wife, we decided we go and met those people. And again, like I said, I thought about it. I said, do you really, really, really want to do this? And then it goes to the next tournament, rolled around. I was all fired up. And when I went to another tournament, of course, that was the Rayburn tournament I went to in 84, late 84. I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop.
And you mentioned that experience of going to Missouri in 3 days, not catching a keeper. And then people like me coming up, I look at your career, or I'll read the bio and I see the wins and all the top 10 finishes. It sometimes does a regular old Joe like me good to know that a fisherman like you even has days that you don't catch them. Mm-hmm. We don't see those days, but it happens to everybody.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Everybody, they use struggle. Bass fishing is, I guess, it will humble you. I mean, It will bring you down. I mean, man, you can be up, and the next day you could not get a single bite, and everybody around you catch them.
Even a bass fishing Hall of Famer like you has days where they just don't bite.
They don't bite. And it seems like here lately I've been having quite a few of those. No, and that's what I tell people. They always want to say, well, what do you do? I said, you got to believe in what you're doing. I said, if you don't believe in what you're doing, you might well not do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got to have confidence in your bait. And then I got people getting the boat as soon as they throw out there, say they changing baits. Well, they didn't give a bait a chance to work.
Must not have much confidence.
No confidence in it. If you did, you'd stick with it. And that's what I've done all my career. It's just, it's to go from one bait to another. Like I said, I've had frog. I mean, obviously huge. The next bait that how many tournaments I won and money I won on it is a jig and pig. Then you go to a Carolina rig, or something like that. I've never been a big crankbait fisherman on the reservoir because of where I fish.
Yeah, it's shallow.
Yeah, mostly. But I can do well on my own. All around the country, every place I fish, up in New York, out in California, down in South Texas, South Florida. I don't care where you go. You throw soft plastic, you can't get a bite. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the easiest thing to do. I don't care where you go. They will hit soft plastic. Mm-hmm. And I've been all over. And if you fish in Lake Mead in the water, you can see a dime at 75 feet deep. You can still catch them shallow with a plastic worm.
Soft plastic worm. Favorite color?
Well, black and blue. And then here lately, I've been getting a lot of watermelon reds, it's that kind of stuff. Junebug red is good. Yeah. I mean, again, it's what the day call for, what the sun is look like, what the sky looks like. That.
Tell me, before we're done, about the time where you went fishing at Sardis. It's just a normal fishing day that turned into a not so normal fishing day.
Oh yeah.
And somebody's boat turned over. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that experience.
Well, we fished. Actually, I fished in Sardis. It was Red Man tournament then.
Okay.
It was called a Red Man tournament. Yeah. And I was up at, I was up there by, wasn't Hurricane Creek. Well, anyway, I was almost to Wyatt's Crossing.
Okay.
Anyway, I was up in there, and of course, when Sardis flooded in the spring of the year, you got buckbrush, got it all around out there. I was just easing through this old buck brush because you don't running because you don't wide open. I was easing through there, and I saw this boat, and just as I looked at the boat, that's when it kind of rolled like this, and then it just did like this here.
Were they up on plane?
No. They I guess they had stopped or whatever it was. But when I looked over there, that boat it raised up, kind of tilted, and then it just kind of straightened up, and then the whole boat just went down. And it was another boat idling through. I tried to wave at them, point them to what was going on, but obviously didn't see me. So I immediately went to them, and they was able to catch on the side of my boat. One guy, he had a life jacket on. No, neither one of them had a life jacket on. Neither one of them had a life jacket on.
Okay.
And the guy said, just grab my brother's hand. There's two brothers. And I got him and got him to hold up. Then his other guy, he was able to get up, was able to get in a boat, and we was able to pull his brother into the boat. His brother had panicked big time.
Really?
I mean, he had panicked. And so I got him in the boat, and then they said, and so I said, look, what we do is just hook to the boat, and we're going to pull it over there to the bank so it won't, sink on down. So we hooked it, and I pulled it over to the bank, and this boat just slid up on the bank there.
Okay.
And then that's when another boat came over. Another boat saw us, and they came over, and we was able to get them out and get some dry clothes on them and different stuff like that.
Were they in the tournament?
No, they were just out fishing. Oh. They were just out fishing. I don't know what happened. Yeah. Did they leave the plug out? Because at that time you don't have automatic bilge pumps and whatever. I don't know what they could have had the plug in and went. I've seen them pull out. Yeah. Pull out. But it was something, and you just and I think that what we did was we got somebody to go and get the vehicle, and they was able to come up and we could drop the trailer in the water, and we was able to get the boat loaded, and they was able to pull it out of there.
How about that?
Because we was on a sandy drop off. It was just almost a Wyatt's Crossing is where it was, and that's where he got the boat. That's where they had launched at Wyatt's Crossing.
Okay,
that's what it was.
And I mean, how fortunate they were that somebody was close by.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, he said it was two, I think it was two brothers.
What time of year?
Oh, it was March.
So the water was cold.
It was cold. Yeah, it was cold. Yeah, March or April, early April, but it was still cold.
Man, I mean, what a great story as a reminder. Put that life jacket on.
Put the life jacket on.
And I know that now, you come now to 2020s, everybody knows that, and I think everybody wearing life jackets is a little more common. But you go back, there was a certain era where not everybody did.
No. No. They would have the life jacket, but they'd be in storage.
In case they got checked, I guess.
Yeah.
Really thankful that you were there. Well, and I'm thankful that I got a chance to talk to you. I get the feeling that if I had all day, we could just ask fishing stories all day, and I could enjoy it. And I guess we got to end it at some point, but it sure has been a pleasure for me to get to meet you and talk to you. You're one of the people that, in a sport that I love, I've never been great at it, but I've loved it and admired it, that I've always looked up to. And really, I don't have any claims to fame in fishing myself, but one of them might be I lost a tournament to Alfred Williams in Texas.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah. And I actually, Mr. Williams, I went home after that second day from Texas, and so I didn't get to stick around and shake your hand after it was over. So can I do that now?
Yes, sir. You bet. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for being here.
All right, man. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this.
Good. Thanks for listening. That's the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm Matt Wyatt, Mr. Alfred Williams. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you outdoors.